Welcome to KPFT Local News at 4. This is a special edition. We'll be back tomorrow with our regularly scheduled newscast. But first, we bring you Marlo Blue with an exclusive interview with the artist David Adickes.
I'm sitting here talking to David Adickes. This is Marlo Blue. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Encompass so many visual elements that are in the world around me on a regular basis that I actually have no idea of what to ask you. It's interesting to me. I mean, of course, I'm from Houston, and so to me, although you're very wide in your scope, and so many people know you in so many different ways, to me it's very personal. When I see your art, it's very personal for me.
Oh, thank you.
Now, of course, you started off as a visual artist that actually did paintings and sculptures. Is that right?
Right. Well, I'm a painter primarily. I studied in France for 2 years, way back when, with Ferdinand Leger, one of the big modernists, and then came back to Houston in 1951, and started painting professionally and had shows and went on from there. Then in 1984, I got my first big commission for a sculpture, and that's the violin, the cellist at the Lyric Center called the Virtuoso.
The fabulous thing. And there's always been so much controversy about the sound and the no sound. And
yeah, well, it's wired. It plays music 24 hours a day when it's working, chamber music.
It's such a wonderful, haunting thing to come out of the opera or anything else at Wortham, and you can hear the sound, and it's just... I love the way that draws you into your art, but that's the way so much of your big pieces are. You see them from afar, and then you move into them, or you move into them with others.
That was the first big public artwork that I did, and the response was so interesting, not all positive, but mostly, that it made me realize that a painting only gets to be seen by the people that own it and their family, or if it's in a museum. But otherwise, there's not an awful lot of recognition, whereas public sculpture is seen by hundreds of people. In the case of the Big Sam Houston in Huntsville, by 60,000 people a day, or cars drive by it. I don't know how many look. And so that got me started on big public works. And after the Virtuoso, in 1984, I did a giant French telephone, which is now on top of an art gallery here in Montrose area, down on the corner of Hyde Park and Mason Street.
I was about to say over there, what a great piece.
Yeah, thank you.
It's great.
And then I did a cornet, which I call a trumpet because most people don't know what a cornet is. That's in Galveston on the Strand. That it's a big, big piece there, and that's been sort of an icon for the Strand area in Galveston. Then that led into doing the President's Parks, and I've done all 44, actually 43 presidents, because though Obama is the 44th president, there have only been 43 presidents because Grover Cleveland was 22nd and 24th, and I only did him once, so there have been 43 men that have been presidents.
I would say once is enough for Grover Cleveland.
Well, he didn't think so.
Apparently America didn't either.
Yeah, well, he was the only one that had a two non-consecutive terms. Lots of presidents have had 2 terms, obviously. But so I did the first park of all those presidents in near Mount Rushmore in South Dakota, because I was very, very impressed by Rushmore. And mine is in the northern Black Hills at Deadwood, or outside of Deadwood. And then I built the second one at Williamsburg, Virginia, 2 or 3 miles from Colonial Williamsburg on an intersection there. And then I sold that one later on. And unfortunately, it's not doing well, and mine in South Dakota is not doing well. It's just for different reasons. The one in South Dakota, the window of when it can be open is so narrow. It's only 2 months a year.
Sure.
And the month of August, half of it is taken up by Sturgis, Harley Davidson. 500,000 bikes are in this little town of 4,000 people for 10 days. And so
But you would think that that would be a destination point, someplace where they could ride.
They don't. We offer free beer and all kinds of stuff. They're not interested. They're interested in their bikes and the women and going fast and all that. A bunch of presidents, they could care less.
And the presidents weren't interested in those same things?
I only asked a couple of them, and they didn't seem to.
How many presidents do you know? That's a good question.
Do I know personally?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I've met 4 or so, but the one that's really close to me is George Sr.
From number 40.
Number 41.
41.
Yeah. And he's very close to me. I've done bronzes of him, about 4 or 5, and I did their dog, Millie. Yeah, I did a bronze of Millie for Barbara. And I slept in the Lincoln bedroom.
Oh, wow.
When I was invited to the White House. When he posed for me in 91, I spent the night in that bed and hardly could sleep because I read the history of the room and the bed itself.
It's like spooky, right?
Well, it's just so amazing to be sleeping in this bed. Actually, it was not Lincoln's own bed.
Oh.
No, he slept around the corner in a smaller room, and that was the war room. Huh. That what's now called Lincoln's bedroom was the war room in the Civil War. Oh. And I sat and wrote a letter to my daughter and my family at the very desk where he wrote and signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
Wow.
And there's a copy of it there on the desk under glass.
Well, of course, we're recording this on June the 20th, so we just had Juneteenth.
Yesterday was Juneteenth.
Just had Juneteenth. And this is going to air on July the 4th. So this is our... We decided talking to you would be an extra patriotic, and that really makes sense.
I'm thrilled.
So you did you channel a little the energy, or you're an artist. Where do you draw your ideas from? Where do you decide? Okay, I'm going to do the historical features.
You mean on each president?
No,
I get or anything I do. Yeah. I get these wild ideas usually when I'm either trying to go to sleep or just after I've awakened of something that I want to do, and then once I've had a cup of coffee, it dawns on me that this is a totally impractical idea, that it couldn't be done or it can be done, and then I'll. But mostly when I'm painting, I kind of go upstairs to my studio and continue where I left off last night, and so it's a continuous process. They're not great leaps where you stop one and go to a whole different thing.
Are you still doing a lot of paintings?
A lot every day, all day. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
How many would you say that you do in a day?
Well, I know they're over 3,000. I think probably about 5,000.
Wow.
The 3,000 I know because of the numbers given to them by the gallery and all that kind of stuff. But then most of them, I have no track. I don't keep a good inventory. Sure. I don't index anything.
Are you still with Meredith Long?
I never was with Meredith.
Oh, I'm so
I was
sorry.
with Dubow's gallery.
Dubow's, of course.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah. But I've got to tell you about my biggest news, though.
Well, we are ready to hear your biggest news. What are you up to?
Well, okay. First of all, I have to tell you that I was born in Huntsville, Texas, because my mother was there, and I wanted to be near her. As a baby, you want to be where your mother is. Otherwise, I've been born in Paris or London or someplace. And so I grew up in this small town, and the high school was the new building. It was built in 1931, and I graduated from this building in 1943. And here, these many years later, they were prepared to demolish this building because the city had outgrown that. It had been demoted to junior high school and then later high school for bad kids or problem kids, what do they call them? And so anyhow.
Juvie Hall.
I heard that they were going to demolish it. And they'd gotten an estimate of $95,000 to take it down, which was more than they wanted to pay. So they were sitting around saying, what are we going to do with this building? It's not useful anymore to us. And somebody said, why don't we sell it? Duh. So immediately when I heard it was for sale, I went out and bought it.
Oh.
I sped up at maximum speed. And I stayed in the city at 60 miles an hour to Huntsville, which is 70 miles away, and bought the high school. And it's a fabulous building. It was built in 1931. Resembles very much Sidney Lanier Junior High School here on West Side. Red brick, white trim. or St. Thomas High School over on Shepherd. It's that 1931, that WPA architecture, very typical of schools in this state. Mm-hmm. It's a great old building, 80,000 square feet, 3 floors. But the main thing the main reason I saved this building is because that's where we learned to jitterbug in 1943 in the gym. We had Friday night dances. That was before they called them sock hops,
sure.
Just dances. And they couldn't tear down a building where we learned to jitterbug. I mean, that's just not proper behavior.
No.
So that had to be saved. I want to put a kidding, of course, a proclamation, a historic plaque there where we learned to jitterbug in the gym. So the gym, until now, I've made that into a museum, and I opened it about 3 weeks ago. Oh. After 3 years of fixing the roof and one thing and another. There's a lot to do to it. Yeah.
Well, that's great. So how can people get directions to go down there?
Well, it's in Huntsville, 3 blocks north of the town square, the courthouse square. But it's not open on a regular basis yet. I still don't have a permanent occupancy permit. I have a temporary. So probably in about the fall.
And what is the collection going to be?
My paintings. 315 of them so far. Just my paintings, yeah. From day one, I mean, from 1949 as a student in Paris to last week. I mean, 65 years of painting.
That's amazing. Yeah. To be able to have that much of your history.
Well, I bought a lot of them back. I've kept some. There are a few that I would never sell. That were just, part of my DNA.
Sure.
In my house, I had a big collection. But then to fill in certain gaps, I have bought back some of when they come up at auction, which is fairly recently. I'm there bidding and hoping to win.
Nice.
Yeah. And my brothers have given me back some of those early ones that I'd given to them, and that sort of thing.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
That's just so nice. And well, you work on board. What is your medium?
Well, right now it's oil and acrylic. More acrylic than anything else. Oil is very expensive now.
It really is, isn't it?
The paint itself. And I paint on canvas stretched over boards or on board, on plywood, primed and all that. And a lot of paper, of course, watercolors and gouaches, and what we used to do, casein. Now we use gouache.
Your paintings in the old days had such a certain consistency of color. You would it would sort of fold together, and you had one set that was reds and one that were sort of avocados and things. Are you doing?
I still do that. Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah. Right now I'm painting red.
Red.
I've painted red for the last 3 days.
That's interesting.
I just came from the art store where I had to stock up on paint. I didn't have enough blue
to add in.
Yeah, and so I do things in series pretty much. Sure. I'll have one idea I like, and I'll do a bunch of those, and then go to the next idea.
Do you draw things out, or do you just simply put them directly onto the canvas?
Well, I do a lot of sketches in a sketchbook, and then I go through, and the little sketches will tell me what I like now, and then I'll go ahead and do a very rough sketch on the canvas itself, and then paint from there.
Can you see it?
Can I see it?
Yeah, when you start to work on the canvas, do you see it?
Yeah. Most of it is based on what I've done before. See, I've been doing this so long that I know what it's going to look like. It's just the challenge is to get it enough different from what I've done in the past, and something new that I like it, that I find it more interesting than if it were too close.
I am Marlo Blue, and I'm here with artist David Adickes. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Did you always know you were going to be an artist?
No. No. Of course, when I was little, I was going to be a fireman and drive a fire truck. Then later on, I was going to be a musician, and music was my first big love. In fact, in high school, when we were learning to jitterbug, I would stand up in front of the mirror and conduct Glenn Miller's In the Mood or Tuxedo Junction or Chattanooga Choo Choo or one of those things. Because, and in junior high school, I was in the band, and I wanted to play trombone because I love Tommy Dorsey and Glenn Miller so much. Dr. Hackney, who was in charge of the whole music program, said, "Your arms are too short." Try the clarinet, which I did. So I've been playing the clarinet ever since. I was in the high school band and then in college at A&M in the marching band and all that stuff. So music has always been a very big part of me.
Sure.
And I guess what convinced me that painting was where I should be is going to France. I was in Air Transport Command at the end of the World War II. You remember that war? It was in all the papers.
You know, I've heard rumor of it.
Well, it was there. It was big. We were flying back and forth from Westover Field, Massachusetts to Paris. And I was in Paris for 2 or 3 days and 3 times a month, that sort of thing. So how are you going to keep them down on the farm?
That's right, after they seen Gay Paris.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then when I finished the service, I had my GI Bill coming 2.5 years. So I spent the first 3 months in the Kansas City Art Institute. And that's where I fell in love with the art school ambiance. You know, it's crazy kids. You do what you want.
Sure.
And nobody's judging you on, because art is a difficult thing to measure. You know, one guy's masterpiece is the next guy's junk, and whereas in engineering, it's, you know, you're either right or you're
in the
not.
class, there's a black and white.
Right.
Did you feed off of that atmosphere? Was it nurturing to you?
Yeah, right. Then I went to France and studied with one of the big modernists, Ferdinand Leger, his name. Very well known.
Of course.
And but I didn't learn anything from him or from the school.
Why?
But what I did learn was from all the other students that were in that school. And then after school, going and sitting in the sidewalk cafe and talking and going to the galleries. There's a gallery on every corner and bookstore across the street. And one of the biggest influences on me was a fellow American who was from New York City. And he had arrived before I did. He was a second student, American student with Leger. I think I was the third. But by the end, there were 50 or more. And when we came back to the States at the same time, he to New York and I to Texas, I decided to open an art school. So I called him. Or maybe I wrote him, you know, long distance was a lot of money there, and said, "Would you like to come to Texas and open an art school with me?" He was on the next train. And his name was Herb Mears.
Oh,
you know his work.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, sure. He's
absolutely
a great painter. And so he showed up, and I picked him up in a little Crosley pickup truck, which is about as big as a bathtub. And everything he owned was in Army, you know, the big chest, you know. And so he moved to Texas, and we opened the art school. Of course, it failed because we didn't charge in advance and that kind of stuff. But we met the greatest people who are still our friends. Herb's passed away. But, I mean, that was the introduction of us to the art community in Houston. He went and got a job working for HL&P as a draftsman, and I went and got a job working for something called Perforating Guns Atlas, which was in the same business as Schlumberger. They were a very minor competitor to Schlumberger. I was drafting well logs and electric well logs, that sort of thing. And I had my boss was a very nice guy named Clay Waters, a Rice graduate, and I was on call at any time of the night to get on a big truck and go to Lovell Lake at Beaumont and do these electric logs in the middle of the night and all that. Anyhow, I said, "I'll make a deal, Clay. I'll be on call whenever I'm needed, but when I'm not needed, I'm home painting." He says, "Good." So I was able to produce enough work to get my first shows and all that sort of thing. And so I haven't looked back. The only other job I've ever had, or was on a payroll, was teaching art at the University of Texas in Austin, 55 to 57.
Wow.
$3,000 a year.
Did you like teaching?
Yeah, I did. I really liked it a lot. But I didn't intend to make a career of it.
Sure.
And after 2 years, I decided to go around the world and take 2 years to do it. So I drove my car up to Seattle, and my brother sold it up there, and I got on a freighter, a Korean freighter, to Japan, and spent the first year there, which was a great year.
Oh, that must be wonderful.
Yeah, 6 months in Kyoto and 6 months in Tokyo.
Huh.
And had a great girlfriend, and painted a lot, sent them back to the gallery here in Houston. It was the James Butte Gallery then, on West Gray. And then Ben DuBose, who ran it, went over to Kirby and opened his own gallery there a few years later. So then I ended up in France after the second year. I was in Bali and Singapore and got every place. India for 6 weeks, Greece, Turkey, every place. And ended up back in France, then bought a studio there in Antibes, which is on the coast between Cannes and Nice, right on the...
You're killing me, man. You're killing me.
I know it. I've had a tough life.
No.
And I kept that studio for several years. Coincidentally, Herb Mears, my friend, we were doing a silk screen demonstration at the Old Contemporary Arts Museum when it was an A-frame building on Dallas Street. This is in 51. And the secretary was a tall, good-looking girl named Abigine McDaniel.
Oh, Abigine.
Do you know her?
Mears,
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, Herb fell for her like a rock and chased her till he caught her, which took several months, And finally she said, "Herb, I'll marry you if you just leave me alone." Anyhow, they had 3 wonderful kids. And one of them, the middle one, is Kirby Mears, who is an architect who has designed the new building that I'm building on Nance Street.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. I see him all the time.
Coming full circle.
Right. He's my godchild. I'm his godfather. And so, yeah, we're very, very close. Yeah, full circle.
Well, do you have a favorite piece? I mean, I know I know you said that there are things that are just full of your DNA, and you've gone through so many different worlds of. First of all, your sculptures are in such an interesting medium. Really, I mean, not a lot of people do that, and it has a fluidity and modernity. But what do you love the most?
Well, I have saved a few of my paintings that I would never sell, and they are my favorites, I suppose. And they're figures, my 3-figure guys and my tall, skinny guys. But I like most of what I do, or I guess I wouldn't be doing it. But I do like the big sculptures. As far as, of course, the Big Sam in Huntsville is so big. Every time I drive up there, I look at him and think, what the hell was I thinking?
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was it's amazing to me every time I see it. So
it's impressive, isn't it?
Your child.
I was driving up there a couple of weeks ago with a lady and her husband who were clients, and she said, "You mean you were crawling all over on top of that thing?" I said, "Yeah, but I was only 70 years old. Oh. I wouldn't do it now. I wouldn't get near it now."
Well, what are your plans for the future? You're opening this new museum, which is great. Are you going to be sending out collections to other museums?
Yeah, that's exactly the point.
Okay.
I was going to. There's so much room there.
Sure.
I have this basement. I've never had this kind of room to do what I want to do. So I want to get about 4 or 5 traveling shows of different subjects. One would be the cubism, one would be the figure, one would be the landscapes and spring trees, all that, and send them to other regional museums in the state, smaller museums that don't have the budget and whatnot to bring stuff in from New York and all.
That's so wonderful.
And I've already done 2 so far. One in McAllen last January and one in Victoria at the Nave Museum. And one in Longview. I forgot about that one. So I'll be doing that, trying to organize that. But I'm not a great organizer. I'm not a good secretary at all. So
you don't have to know everything.
I certainly don't. Yeah.
If artists would only learn that one thing, let other people do the things they're good at.
I know it, yeah.
Because there's so few who have your kind of talent.
I know. Well, I'm a different generation. I mean, today, God, all the electronic. I feel like an analog cork floating in a digital sea, trying to find the shore. I don't even know how to work my telephone,
You know,
I find it 6 weeks later and find there's 34 calls.
well, let's talk, though, a second longer.
Yeah.
Will you continue to find ways to license your images and create more?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any more visions?
All the time.
Store
I mean,
for
my
us?
problem is time.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm trying to buy a new watch that has 28 hours a day.
Will that help? Tell me how that works out for you.
Well, 4 more hours.
David Adickes, I am so grateful that you came today. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our listening audience?
Well, I would say to young artists that are starting out, I wish somebody told me this and I understood it, is that when you're working, you only have one person to please. That's yourself. Do not let other people's criticism get to you, because they've got their vision, you've got yours. Do it the way you see it, and try not to be influenced by what you're hearing. A good friend of mine, James Michner, the writer,
If you're going to name drop,
well, he wrote
that's
a book.
the way to go.
He wrote a book about me. I was with him when he died. I mean, we were great friends. We spent a lot of time together. I met him in Japan.
You tell me this now?
Well, you didn't ask. We met in Japan. Of course, he got terribly criticized by the critics for his writing. And one time, when I did actually the Virtuoso downtown, the Chronicle slammed me, and the worst was the Rice magazine called Cité. Really didn't like anything that wasn't steel and or abstract. And so anyhow, I called Jim Michner about it, and he said, because I knew that he'd suffer this kind of thing a lot, he said, when this first happened to me, I called my editor, Bennett Cerf, at random, and Bennett said to me, when this first happened to me, I called somebody else. Anyhow, he said 4 words, all you have to remember: don't explain, don't complain.
Ooh.
Let history judge the work. Don't try to defend what you've done with words. If somebody doesn't like it, if they don't like it, they don't like it. It's their problem, not yours.
Absolutely wonderful advice and words to live by. And all you new artists out there you go. Somebody who knows. David Adickes, thank you so much for joining me today.
My great pleasure.
Thanks for listening to KPFT Local News at 4. From all of us to all of you, have a great July 4th.